In a world increasingly dominated by science and technology, is there still a need for religion? Today, we will delve into this question by examining the philosophical roots of belief in God, drawing evidence from the Pre-Socratic and Socratic periods. I am Syed Najm Qadri, seeking truth, finding God. Welcome to Divine Seekers. In the previous episode, number 1 of this podcast, we proved evidence of God from language and literature. Today's topic is need of God in the 21st century, evidence from pre-Socratic and Socratic period. In today's episode, we will inshallah cover the following: early belief in the divine, pre-Socratic and Socratic philosophers and their belief in the divine source, influence of religion on philosophy, and the search for truth. In terms of reference, we will look at Bertrand Russell's A History of Western Philosophy, which is a very comprehensive book on exploration of philosophical thought from its origins in ancient Greece to the 20th century. This book includes in-depth discussions of ancient philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and as well as later thinkers which came in later like Descartes, Kant, and Nietzsche. We will also look at lessons in Stoicism from John Sellers. In depth, we will try to cover the renowned books and references and then build it up in our discussion of need of God and the evidence of God. So, from the creation of time and world, there's always been humans' inclination towards belief in God. This is the foundation. All of these philosophers were not messengers, and think about it, they're not messengers or not even the students of messengers or prophets. They were independent and free with their separate existence, development, and thinking. Even in their existence, there is no denial of God. Independently, no prophets, not their students. Yes, their understanding can be hazy for God. And if that is hazy, the understanding gets hazy, then God sends his messengers and his prophets to align the humanity back to the right track. So in this instance, philosophers, we are in consensus of the concept of existence of God in religion. We do not find the denial of this in any time period in human history from the time of recorded evidences. Now, let's explore these periods, historical periods in detail. First one is prehistoric period. Timeline of prehistoric period is roughly 2.5 million years ago to around 1200 BCE. What were the key characteristics of this period? Lack of written records, because of course it's too old. Reliance on oral traditions and artifacts. Development of stone tools, fire, and basic shelters that they used to go on with their life. Transition from hunting and gathering and nomadic life, we see, to agricultural and settled communities. Humanity was getting organized and developed. And then in this historical periods, we see emergence of early art and religious beliefs. There are very interesting practices that they used to do. Number one, which actually shows us that they believed in afterlife, which was the burial practices. Intentional burial. Intentional burial of the dead, often with tools, ornaments, food, indicates belief in afterlife or a spiritual dimension. Then we also see in this period ritualistic treatment of the dead. Evidence of specific rituals associated with the burial, such as body positioning, inclusions of symbols, objects suggest a belief or system related to death and hereafter. Then we also find in prehistoric period evidence of cave art, symbolic representations depicting animals, humans, and abstract symbols. Some of these symbols has religious or spiritual significance, which often represent different deities, spirits, or cosmic forces. We also see shamanic practices. Some cave art depicts figures in trance-like states or engaged in ritualistic activities, suggesting the presence of shamanic practices and altered states of consciousness. So humanity believed that yes, you can get into an altered state, in a spiritual state. Then in this time period, we also see figurines and amulets depicting humans, often female, with exaggerated sexual characteristics, suggesting the belief in fertility cults and the power of female deities. Remember that goddess named Diana existed in this time, which often translated or graduated to Virgin Mary, Mother of God. We see small objects such as animal teeth or carved stones worn as amulets may have been believed to offer protection from harm or disease. Where are they getting these kind of concepts? Then we also see megalithic structures, stone circles and alignments, constructions of massive stone structures such as Stonehenge. These Stonehenge may have had religious or astronomical significance, which of course indicates a belief in celestial bodies and cosmic cycles. Then we also see ritual sites, sacred landscapes, certain locations such as caves, mountains, or bodies of water. These may have been considered sacred and used for rituals and ceremonies. Where is humanity getting these concepts? So, these findings suggest that our ancestors had complex spiritual lives and engaged in practices that may be considered precursors to modern religion. And also note that these concepts might be a misguided and distorted version of religion against the Islamic monotheist belief. Hence, whenever humanity was misguided, Allah used to send His prophets, messengers. From pre-Socratic period, we come to Socratic period, which is primarily 5th century BCE, classical Greece. What is the key characteristic of this period? We see philosophical inquiry and debate centered around Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. We see focus on ethics, knowledge, and the nature of reality. We also see emphasis on critical thinking, questioning, assumptions, seeking truth through reason. Also, in this period, there were development of formal logic and scientific inquiry. And this became the base of influence on Western philosophy and education. So, if we looked at Greek in 585 BC, Thales of Miletus was a Greek philosopher and mathematician and astronomer who lived in the 6th century BC. He is often considered the first philosopher in the Western tradition. And he's also considered as one of the 7 sages of Greece. Then the next period after that, we call it Hellenistic period. From 323 BCE to 31 BC. What were the characteristics of this period? We see Greek cultural influence spreading across the Mediterranean and the Near East. Rise of Hellenistic kingdoms, including those of Alexander the Great and his successors. Blending of Greek and other cultures leading to a cosmopolitan and diverse society from Syria to India, even to the areas of Iraq and Levant. And then in this we see flourishing of arts, literature, and philosophy. And from there were development of Hellenistic cities and urban centers which become cultural centers. So all of the periods from the time that we see traces of humans, there are evidence of existence of religion. Now, it's for our listeners to determine that who inculcated this belief of religion and ethics and morality in these cultures, in these time periods. Now, let's look at in greater detail each of these periods. Pre-Socratic philosophy, from the time of inception of societies and whatever thoughts and concepts developed in the history. As they developed and took form of philosophy and science, there has remained a concept of the creator of the universe. In the early period, if you look at, there is recognition of religion, not only for an individual, but as a collective and social thing. The society used to follow religion. There was guidance and also corruption and decay in those thinking, as I've mentioned earlier. And when there was corruption in those thoughts, there were messengers and prophets sent. In the pre-Socratic Greek society, there was two major gods. One was called Dionysus, and Bacchus were the titles of the two gods. Those teachings and followers had full concept of religion at that time for these gods. And these concepts then developed into school of thought. They evolved into school of thought. Orpheus, a legendary musician, poet, and prophet in Greek mythology, is believed to have lived in a remote past, predating Homer and Trojan War. So we are looking at these personalities and what they wrote, what they believe in religion or divine. So Orpheus, earliest literary reference of Orpheus dates back to around 6th century BC. In a fragment by the lyric poet Ibycus, he has written about Orpheus. And he says that Orpheus was a reformer who then reformed the concept of Dionysus and Bacchus. When he carried out the reformation, he reformed the concept of the souls after death, and that it will be rewarded and punished. And they will be rewarded and punished according to the deeds that they do in this world. Then there were concept of eternal reward and punishment according to its way of life on earth. Now, this is a concept of life on earth. Where did Orpheus get it from? Where did he get this concept? Orpheus once said that one should focus on spiritual cleansing of the soul through ceremonies and congregation. Orpheus also gave the concept of do's and don'ts. He also said that human is part of earthly and part heavenly. And he said if one focuses on the do's, then he becomes stronger in his spiritual side, his heavenly side. Same teaching that Orpheus is preaching or Orpheus is preaching has the roots in the concepts of religion and faith from Adam alayhi salam to Nuh alayhi salam to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Then further to Musa alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam, and Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can see there is a linear progression in this thought process. Again, so where does Orpheus or Orpheus, a reformer, is getting this concept from? Where is he getting this benchmark of morality? So after Orpheus comes Zeus, Z-E-U-S, who was also the reformer. Another reformer after Zeus, very famous one, is Pythagoras. We learned Pythagoras' theorem in our schools. Pythagoras was a renowned Greek philosopher and mathematician. He is believed to have lived approximately 570 to 495 BC. So, of course, the BC years come progressing towards the lower end side, right? Pythagoras was born in the island of Samos, located off the coast of Asia Minor. And then Pythagoras traveled extensively throughout the Mediterranean region, including Egypt and Babylon. He's a famous mathematician whose formulas are used in schools today, as I mentioned. His influence extended beyond mathematics, and he is considered one of the most important pre-Socratic philosophers. His ideas about the harmony of the universe and the importance of reason and mathematics had a profound impact on Western thought and continue to be studied and debated today. So what he introduced, ascetic life entered philosophy during this time. Spirituality, non-materialism entered philosophy at this time. Like it's mentioned in the hadith from Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2956, that this world is a prison for the believer, and trial and tribulations that it brings. So this concept of a world being prison for the believer with trial and tribulations was present in their thinking at that time. And then Pythagoras is saying that to escape this, there are only two ways. One is purification, and number two is renunciation. Now the question is, who is teaching this language and this concept to Pythagoras? Purification, renunciation. This concept of thought is coming from religion, and who brought the religion is only the God, and the Creator has brought this religion and this concept. So what does Pythagoras says? He says, I'm going to tell God about all my troubles when I get home. My homeland is where it inhabited, where the soul lived. And that is my home, and there is my Lord. And I will tell my Lord about my sufferings in this world. So where is he getting? He's talking about Lord and his sufferings. Pythagoras further says, we are strangers in this world, and the body is the tomb of the soul. And yet we might not seek to escape this by murder or suicide. For we are the chattels of God, and we are his herdsmen. And we will see further in Socrates' thinking to the similar kind of thought process. So you can see connection of life, afterlife, renunciation, purification. After Pythagoras, there is another philosopher who came in Greek who's called Thales, Thales. He was from Milesian school of thought. Thales existed in 585 years BC. He was from this area, and his followers founded this school of thought. So Thales is the founder of philosophy as a subject. Thales said, the origin of all things is water, which Quran says that origin of all things in life in this world is water. Now the question is, science has discovered it recently. Where is Thales 2,500 years ago mentioning this? Where is he getting this guidance from? This is big because Wahi and revelation was at all ages. Even Thales is taking this concept from religion. After Thales, there's another philosopher called Anaximander, who's also talking about the same concept. Anaximander, he was a prominent figure in ancient Greek philosophy. He lived from 610 to 546 BC. And he was born in Miletus, a city in modern-day Turkey. And he is considered as one of the founders of Western philosophy and science. Now let's look at what Anaximander is saying. Anaximander says that there is singularity in the evolution of all things in this universe. Of course, we will discuss in greater detail in another episode about this, which was discovered 2,500 years after Einstein talks about it, singularity. How come Anaximander is talking about it 2,500 years ago? Now philosophy is not developed and science is non-existent at that time. So what is the source of all of this? It is from the concept of religion and God. If the messengers and prophets say, then it's not astonishing, because of course they are getting from Wahi. But how come a thinker is saying all of this? What is the background of this? Anaximander is saying that this singular source is infinite, eternal, ageless, and it encompasses all the world. Let's look at Quran Majid, Surah Yasin, ayat number 82. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Allah says, His command when He wills something is to only say to it, be, so it is. How did Anaximander know about this, and how Thales knew about this? Now, after pre-Socratic period, let's come to the Socrates era. And see existence of God in that era. The most famous one in this era is, of course, Socrates, one of the most influential figures in Western philosophy. Lived approximately 470 BC to 399 BC in Athens, Greece. And of course, to keep our content concise and to the point, we will discuss just one point agenda, which is need of God from his teachings. Leave aside other topics that these philosophers bring in. So, Socrates is one of the first philosophers who, through his teaching, sayings, and thoughts, have integrated values within the society and fought against injustice. And we discussed in our previous episode of Need of God that the moral values, the differentiation between right and wrong, to cover their body parts or not, marry their mothers and sisters, to follow civic rules. Where did these concepts originate from? Even those philosophers like Socrates believed in a single divine source. Socrates believed in a personal divine guide, often referred to as his daemonion, Daemonion. This could be interpreted as a direct connection to a higher power, suggesting a monotheistic belief. You have to understand. Now, let's look at his work from Plato's Apology, where he writes, now God orders me to fulfill the philosopher's mission of searching into myself and other men. So Socrates further writes, men of Athens, I honor and love you, but I will obey God rather than you, rulers of that time. And while I have breath and strength, I will never cease from the practice and teachings of philosophy, exhorting anyone whom I meet and saying to him after my manner. Now the foundation of philosophy is coming out of God religion. They believed in God, and to believe in God means that he believes in religion. Now, if you ask me why, I will tell you, because God has commanded me. Socrates is writing further. And I think that this is truly the reason. I believe that no greater good has ever happened in the state than my service to the God. This is the topmost service, is to serve God. He's saying that. Socrates is also referring to the speech given by Moses at Mount Sinai after receiving the 10 Commandments. Not to retaliate evil for evil to anyone, whatever evil we may have suffered from him. Now, this concept is also mentioned in the Quran. And before that, Socrates is quoting Musa alayhi salam. The concept of happiness, moral values, good and bad, and all of this, where did this thinking come from? Now, Socrates is saying just before his death, but the hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways. I to die and you to live. Which is better, God only knows. This was, my dear listeners, is the concept of Socrates about God. After Socrates, let's come to Plato, one of the most influential figures in Western philosophy. He lived approximately from 428 to 347 BC. He was again born in Athens, Greece. He was a student of Socrates and later became the teacher of Aristotle. So he's in the middle of Socrates and Aristotle. Let's look at some of the work of Plato. In his book Republic, he writes, "Of this one bed made by God, there can be knowledge. But in respect to the many beds made by carpenters, there can be only opinions." The form of good he brought in. Plato posits the form of the good as the ultimate source of reality and truth. It's often described as the highest reality that Plato mentioned, transcending the physical world and serving as the ultimate goal of all things. Plato, in his writings, also talked about divine craftsmanship. In the Timaeus, Plato discusses the creation of the universe by a divine craftsman, often referred to as the demiurge. This demiurge is a powerful, intelligent being who shapes the cosmos according to the eternal forms. See his thinking. Then Plato also talks about the soul's origin. He suggests that the soul is immortal and originates from the divine realm. He says that the soul is part of the divine and its ultimate goal is to return to its divine source. Plato also considered suicide as unlawful. Now, where is he getting these moral values from? He declared suicide as unlawful in his work Laws in book number 9, where he argues that suicide is a cowardly act and that those who commit suicide should be denied proper burial rites. Where is he getting these moral concepts from? Plato also suggested that suicide is a crime against the state as it deprives the state of a citizen. Now, after Plato, let's look at Aristotle, student of Plato, as I mentioned earlier, and his belief in God. Aristotle had a huge influence in the 13th or 14th century Western philosophy, modern Western philosophy. He believed in God and gives evidence on the existence of God. He says there must be something which originates motion, and this something must itself be unmoved and must be eternal substance and actuality. He says about the concept of cause and effect. He also says life also belongs to God. For the actuality of thought is life, and God is that actuality. And God's self-dependent actuality is life, most good and eternal. This is God's omnipotent. We say, therefore, that God is a living being, eternal and most good. Then he presented the concept of unmoved mover, as I said earlier. Then he talks about many small gods, but on top of all of that, there is a supreme God, the unmoved mover. So Aristotle further states that so far as men are rational, they partake of the divine, which is immortal. It is open to man to increase the level of the divine, to get close to nature. He gives a concept how to get close to nature, close to the divine through spirituality. And then he says, the more he gets towards the immortal, he will become like it. And this is the peace of spiritual reflection. From there, he graduates to spiritual perfection. So in summary, in today's episode, We explored the concepts of gods existing within the framework of pre-Socratic philosophy, focusing on thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Some key takeaways were that early belief in the divine existed in all the recorded times in history. Absence of formal religions might be there, but early civilizations like Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek period exhibited evidence of spiritual beliefs. And that was through their burial rituals, cave art, and the creation of idols and amulets. Then in pre-Socratic philosophers and God, despite their focus on reason and natural explanations, pre-Socratic philosophers acknowledged a higher power. We looked at Thales believing in God, Anaximander believing in God, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, everyone. They might be calling it a different reference point, divine existence, high power, omnipotent, omnipresent. It's all is the meaning of the same divine source, which is God. In essence, we explored in today's episode that while philosophy and religion may appear distinct, they are interconnected. Philosophical inquiry, even in the early stages, was influenced by religious beliefs and often led to conclusions that supported the existence of a higher power. So that's it from me. What are your thoughts on this podcast? Share your insights in the comments below. In the next episode, inshallah, we will look into the need of religion and the existence of God in the 21st century from philosophical, post-philosophical era, from Socrates to the modern era, inshallah, in detail. That's it for me in this week's episode. Any truth I've spoken is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I made any mistake, may Allah forgive my shortcomings. Until next time, stay curious and keep seeking. Wassalam.